Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating, highly practical technical topic that, honestly, directly impacts the bottom line of your web projects. We're going to take a really close look at how our foundational, architectural choices completely dictate website success. Specifically, we're breaking down Gridsome, that super popular Vue-powered framework, and we're going to figure out if shifting our rendering strategy can actually deliver the kind of performance and SEO boosts that modern websites demand.
Performance and SEO aren't abstract nice-to-haves. They shape how real people experience your site. I want to kick things off with this idea because it perfectly anchors our whole technical discussion in real human stakes. Look, a page that loads in under a second, that builds immediate trust with a visitor. Conversely, a page that stutters, hangs on a white screen, or flashes a bunch of unstyled content, that feels broken, right? Even if the code behind the scenes is technically flawless. And remember, search engines are looking at these exact same signals. Speed, stability, and ease of crawling literally dictate whether your audience even finds your site in the first place.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the classic web trade-off, see exactly how Gridsome works, unpack the speed and SEO advantages, talk through the very real practical limitations, and then wrap it all up with the final verdict.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1. The classic web trade-off, also known as the Vue SPA dilemma.
You know, if you've spent any time building modern applications, you've inevitably slammed right into the single-page application, or SPA, dilemma. On one hand, we absolutely crave rich interactivity. Traditionally, we get that through client-side rendering, where the server basically just sends over a mostly empty HTML shell, and then we ask the user's browser to do all the heavy lifting to render the page. But on the other hand, we desperately need fast, indexable pages that deliver immediate, SEO-friendly content without making the user's device work so hard. Bridging that gap, the gap between a rich, app-like feel and instant delivery, that is basically the holy grail of modern web development.
Which brings us to Section 2, how Gridsome works, and demystifying the build time shift. So Gridsome steps in and attempts to give us the absolute best of both worlds, that rich interactivity plus blazing speed, by completely changing where the rendering actually happens. It's a Vue-powered static site generator, what we usually call an SSG. Now, instead of shipping that empty HTML shell we were just talking about, Gridsome generates full, totally populated HTML pages during the build process. Those files can then be served from a simple, ridiculously fast content delivery network, or CDN. The absolute game changer here is that the very first response a visitor gets is already meaningful HTML. No more blank screens.
Let's move along and see how this builds under the hood. It's basically a three-step process. Step 1, Gridsome uses a GraphQL data layer to pull in all your content, whether you've got local markdown files, a headless CMS, or external APIs. Step 2, at build time, it takes all that raw data and generates your actual routes. We're talking your blog posts, product pages, the whole shebang. Step 3, because everything is pre-rendered, that meaningful HTML is served up instantly to both browsers and search engine bots. Now, Vue still kicks in on the client side afterward to give you that rich interactivity, but the amazing part is that the user's experience never starts with a blank page.
All right, Section 3, the speed advantage. We're talking pre-rendering and asset optimization. And this brilliantly illustrates why static generation is so powerful. Its absolute superpower is reducing what has to happen the exact moment a user requests a page. If we compare a standard client-only SPA to a Gridsome SSG, the differences are just staggering. Instead of forcing your user to download a massive JavaScript app bundle just to read one single article, Gridsome delivers lightweight HTML right away. The text is visible instantly, no waiting for scripts to execute. And then hydration, which is basically Vue waking up that static markup to make it interactive, happens in the background. It doesn't block the user from reading the page. That specific sequencing is the secret sauce that makes an SSG site feel so incredibly snappy, especially on mobile. But wait, it gets better, because Gridsome doesn't stop at just HTML. It comes with built-in asset optimization that perfectly complements the static model. You're getting automatic code splitting, meaning every page only loads the exact code it actually needs. You get hashed, aggressive caching for your static assets. And, remarkably, it handles responsive WebP image generation right at build time, so visitors are downloading way fewer bytes. Basically, by trading slightly slower build times behind the scenes for optimized delivery to the user, you're yielding massive improvements in core web vitals, things like time to first byte and largest contentful paint. Moving right along to Section 4, solving for SEO, stable content and predictable pages.
Look, if you take away only one thing from this explainer today, let it be this. Search engine bots are incredibly impatient. They absolutely thrive on stable, meaningful HTML, and they really hate waiting around for JavaScript to figure out what your page is about. Well, Gridsome feeds these bots perfectly. You get exact, build time control over your page titles and meta descriptions. You get unique open graph tags pulled right from your front matter so your links look amazing on social media. And because it's all generated straight from your content, you end up with clean URLs and robust internal linking without any expensive database calls slowing things down. It totally removes duplicate content confusion, serving up this fast, completely crawlable response that lets Google interpret your site instantly.
Okay, time for Section 5, Practical Limitations. Let's talk about the actual reality of static generation.
Because as much as we all love these speed benefits, we have to stay objective here. So is static generation just magic? Emphatically, no. It is not the perfect tool for every single job. The fundamental reality of this architecture is that your pages are only ever as fresh as your very last build.
Let's break down those infrastructural realities for a second. First off, because content requires a rebuild to update, a purely static approach is really awkward for something like real-time inventory. If a product goes out of stock, that static HTML literally won't know until you trigger a new build. Second, if your site scales up to tens of thousands of pages, your build times can become a serious bottleneck. And third, you still have to manage your hydration costs. There is a very real performance ceiling here if you aren't disciplined. A static page with a tiny little newsletter sign-up, super fast. A static page that forces the browsers to hydrate a massively complex interactive UI framework, yeah, you're going to lose a lot of those speed benefits really quickly.
Because of these limitations, you really have to pick your battles. Gridsome absolutely shines for content-driven sites, blogs, documentation, portfolios, maybe small to medium e-commerce catalogs where your product info isn't changing every 5 minutes. If you love a Git-based workflow, it's a stellar choice. But on the flip side, for systems needing real-time inventory, highly personalized per-user dashboards, or data that's changing constantly, you are much, much better served by traditional server-side rendering.
All right, home stretch. Section 6, the final verdict. Let's do a rapid-fire Q&A. Let's bring all of this together by hitting the most common questions developers have when evaluating this framework. Question 1. Is Gridsome still useful if my site actually needs dynamic data?
The short answer is yes, absolutely, but you have to be intentional about your architecture. The absolute best approach here is to pre-render your stable SEO-critical content at build time, and then just fetch the truly dynamic pieces of data on the client side using serverless functions or APIs. That hybrid approach lets you maintain those lightning-fast initial loads without pretending that every single thing can be perfectly static.
Next up, the ultimate SEO myth. Does static generation automatically guarantee top SEO rankings?
Emphatically, no way. Gridsome and static generation remove common technical barriers, like slow page loads and hard-to-crawl content, but your rankings still heavily rely on the actual relevance of your writing, the quality of your content, your backlinks, and user satisfaction. Think of an SSG as giving you an incredibly strong technical foundation. It's a prerequisite for success for sure, but it is definitely not a shortcut for actually producing high-quality content.
Moving on to a highly practical technical question. What's the biggest performance mistake developers make when building with a Vue-based SSG?
It is overhydrating pages. So, the crucial point is this. If you mount heavy interactive components literally everywhere on your page, you will completely ruin the exact performance gains that you adopted an SSG to achieve in the first place. Those heavy JavaScript bundles are just going to bog down the browser. You have to keep your interactivity focused, aggressively split your code, and carefully manage any third-party scripts.
Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought. If you were to prototype your most important page, say your main landing page or your highest traffic blog post, with Gridsome today, how much faster could your initial load time really be? I challenge you to run that small experiment. Measure the speed, check the HTML output, and just see the difference for yourself. You might just discover the exact architectural upgrade your site has been waiting for. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope you found it incredibly useful. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.